We in this world.
Hello and welcome. You are watching or listening to Dancing with the Planets. I'm your co-host, Amelia Fortes, the Cosmic CEO.
This is Ashley Rose, the Bliss Queen, astrologer, human design reader, and womb healer.
And we are so excited to bring this series to you because there is a lot going on in astrology in 2025 and beyond. I'm sure that even if you're not super into astrology, you've been hearing the buzz that 2025 is unprecedented. And you might have even been hearing things that might sound scary. But for us, we really wanted to do this series. It's Dancing with the Planets. We're here to dance and flow with the energy. And our goal here is really to prepare you for the energy and give you some tips on how to best work with it. We're not here about fear mongering. We're all about focusing on pleasure and joy and using these energies that might be complicated or challenging, but as opportunities for your next quantum leap in life. And today we are going to be talking about the super infamous Mars retrograde that has been happening since the end of 2024 and will continue into the beginning of 2025. We're going to sprinkle a little spice in there and talk about Mars-Pluto oppositions. I'm just going to hand it over to you, Ashley. What the heck is Mars retrograde? What is going on? How can we get our lives together?
Before I go into everything going on with Mars retrograde and Pluto and everything, just to continue to give a bit more context for this program, why we're even doing this today. 2025 is a year of big changes. It's one of those like once in 1,000 years kind of years that we're having. And that is because all of the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Saturn, they're all changing signs this year. This literally means that 2025 is the beginning of a new world order, a new era that we are entering. A year or two from now, most of what we know is going to look really different. The way that we work will look different. The way that we make money is going to look different. The way that we live our lives and collaborate and connect, it's all going to look different. What Amelia and I wanted to do for everyone here is that instead of being scared of all these big changes that you might be hearing about, instead of being fearful, just reminding that the point of this Astro series is really to activate joy and pleasure in our lives. The more that we can understand the energy behind these planetary movements, the more that we can understand how we're being impacted on both an individual and a collective basis. And then from there, the more power we have in choosing how to move through these big energies, the power of choice. That is what we're underlining today here. There's power in our choices. There's power in how we choose to show up. And by choosing to show up for ourselves, our communities, our collectives, by activating pleasure, activating joy, activating fun where possible, we're helping to build this new world order that we are all collectively creating right now as we speak. How exciting is that, right? That's a tall order, but we do it.
I'm so glad that you said it that way because y'all are watching this, but Ashley and I have been working with the energies and doing all of our witchy magic behind the scenes and really setting intentions for what we want with this series. Yes, there's going to be big changes, new world order. We want to prepare you for that so that you have intention and the power of choice, like Ashley says. And I always like to explain astrology. It's like the weather. If you know that it's going to be raining, you're going to want to bring your umbrella and your raincoat and your rain boots. It sucks when you go outside and then it starts pouring rain and you're not prepared. So we're just here to prepare you. New world order. No big deal, y'all.
No big deal.
Let's talk about it.
Age of Aquarius is upon us. Mars retrograde. First of all, Mars as a planet typically stays in a sign for about 2 months at a time. However, we are having this massive, long Mars retrograde cycle. It's actually lasting over 6 months. It started in November of 2024 with Mars retrograde, with Mars in the sign of Cancer. The Mars retrograded in December, and now it is staying retrograde until February 2023, and it's remaining between the signs of Leo and Cancer until April of 2025. So that's kind of the timeline that we're looking at right now. And so when Mars first went retrograde in the sign of Leo, that happened on December 6th of 2024. Some themes that we might have experienced kind of at the end of last year, coming into the beginning of January of 2025 of this year. So Leo rules over self-expression and creativity and how we show up and our unique authenticity, both for ourselves and to the collective. And so we might have been seeing some bigger things, both as an individual and as a collective around self-expression. For instance, with this performative sign of Leo, have you been holding back your authentic expression? maybe at work and how you show up on social media and how you show up for your offerings, for your community? Have you been overextending yourself in some way? How are you showing up for yourself online, for your career, for the people around you? That might have been a big thing that you're grappling with toward the end of 2025. On the other hand, how have you not been showing up for yourself and your self expression? Have you been feeling blocked creatively? Have you been feeling like there has been breaks put on the way that you are expressing yourself in the world and how you show up for your community, for your clients, for your friends, for your family, whatever? That could have been some of the things that might have come up for you at the end of 2024. There's also something here about courage. Leo is that heart-ruled sign of the zodiac. It's all about the heart. It's all about courage to shine your light. There might be issues where you've been feeling fearful or having that lack of courage around shining your light. Maybe you've been questioning your own self-expression or your creativity. Again, all of those things might be something. A final thing that really might have been present for anyone, that especially if your personal chart was being triggered by this Mars and Leo transit, it is all about burnout, okay? Mars is this planet of action, of ambition. It's the masculine planet of getting things done, making things happen. It's that penetrating energy of you setting that goal and you aiming for it and you doing what it takes to go after it. And so with this Mars and Leo energy and going back and forth and there being a bit of retrograde action, what was our relationship to burnout at the end of 2024? That might have been really present for a lot of the collective. I know in my own life, I had a lot of clients, a lot of friends that just felt exhausted around the holiday season. Some people even fell ill. We really were meant to re-examine how we use our energy, Mars, and are we honoring our natural rhythms and our natural cycles? Or do you have a tendency to push yourself through at all costs, almost to show up, to be productive, and to almost prove your worth and your worthiness, proving that you have a seat at the table rather than feeling your inherent value regardless and giving yourself that time to rest? Those I know were big topics for people around me in my life around the holidays. You know, there's a lot of comparisonitis that might have come up for people around the holiday season at the end of last year. There's just so much that we can go into. Amelia, I know that you personally have personal points in your chart that were very much so activated by this Mars and Leo, and then also Mars and Cancer, which we'll talk about in a bit. But do you mind sharing some of your personal lived experience with this energy?
Do I have a story for y'all? Like I said with the weather metaphor, I knew this Mars retrograde was coming. So I already mentally and emotionally prepared myself that things might not go my way and things might not go as planned. There might be delays. There are going to be events that happen in my life that give me opportunities to reassess and reflect and recalibrate. That's like usually how I think about retrograde. Retrograde starts with the letters RE. So all the RE words: reflect, reassess, recalibrate. So I already knew to plan to not move fast and to do things with intention and to give myself permission to move slowly and intentionally. Thankfully for that, it's kind of like I had my little raincoat, I had my umbrella, I had my rain boots. I wasn't stuck out here getting soaking wet like some people who might not have been prepared. For me, especially because Mars retrograde was in Leo and Cancer, those are major highlights in my chart. I have a Leo dominant chart. My Mercury, which is the planet that rules communication, and my Venus, which is the planet that rules love, romance, relationships, matters of the heart, beauty, art, are both in Leo, and my sun is in Cancer. So I'm a big fire, water, baby, and I was really feeling it. In December, there were events that happened that really gave me an opportunity to look at the matters of the heart and how I express myself. Won't go into too many details. If you want the tea, you can DM me. I'm happy to tell you the story. But basically, there were miscommunications and misunderstandings that happened in my personal life, romantically, sexually, and friendship-wise. During that time, literally beginning of December, right on my sun, my self-expression, who I am, how I show up in the world, I had a lot of opportunities to really ask myself, how do I want to express my disappointment, my anger, what is required for apology and retribution and repair of trust, the break in trust with the retrograde in Leo, Mercury and Venus. So my communication, my love, my heart, all of that was just like there was a big light shined down on it. And I had to really reflect and be with myself and ask myself, okay, how do I want to communicate my upset? How do I want to communicate how I feel? How do I want my relationships to be? How do I want to show up? And it was all literally those first 2 weeks of December and into January. The beginning of January was all about that. And it's funny because I knew, and we can't always predict what's going to happen or how the energy is going to show up, but I knew that I would be tested in my Mercury communication, in my Venus relationships, the heart, and in how I show up in the world, my sun. That's all Leo Cancer, baby. So I knew that I was going to be tested. I knew that I was going to have opportunities to really look at these areas of my life. I sure was tested and shown. I feel like I could probably say more, but I'm like I'm like having vulnerability hangover a little bit. But it was a lot. It was a lot. And I went through it, but I was mentally and emotionally prepared for it. I already knew that I would want to give myself more time and space in my day. Ashley, you also spoke about our relationship to burnout. Leo right on my Venus and my Mercury, there came a point where I was like, I'm done talking for now. Like I'm done. I need to just take a step back and reassess and recalibrate and reflect on how I want to communicate, how I'm feeling, how I want to move forward in these relationships. And I gave myself that permission. And I did get burned out though. It was a lot of talking and a lot of heart stuff and a lot of self-expression stuff. I got pretty burned out because I was just like, we need to take a break. I need to take a pause on this relationship. We need to talk about this later. That right on track.
Yes, exactly. I love that you brought that up, especially that whole like the rest and the restoration. Again, those RE words, reflection. A lot of what comes up both with just retrograde planet action in general, which is often like looking back into the past, reflecting, having to redo things, feeling low energy because Mars is energy, that whole retrograde action. And then the fact that Mars moved back into Cancer. So the date for that was January 6th, and it's going to be there until February 23rd. It's like, so now Mars is in the watery sign of Cancer, retrograde there. And what does that mean? And that's almost like a double whammy because on the one hand, according to traditional astrology, if you're looking at Hellenistic astrology or traditional based astrology, Mars does not do its best, quote unquote, in the sign of Cancer. Again, I have my own opinions about those kind of things, but according to how we are typically looking at this interpretation, Mars in Cancer, Mars is a fire sign. Mars is ruled by the sign of Aries. Mars is fire. Mars is action. Again, Mars is a very masculine. You think of athletes and warriors and the military and sharp things and going fast and race cars. That's Mars, right?
Gold medal Olympian.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Olympics, those are very Mars types of activities. Cancer is the ultimate sign of the mother. Cancer is super yin, super feminine. Cancer is watery, which puts out the fire of Mars. Mars in Cancer wants to move faster, but cannot for whatever reason. We can expect there to be delays when Mars is in Cancer. Projects, starting, stopping. You think of an amazing idea, you think you're going to just put it out there. Normally it would take you, a certain time. And under this Mars and Cancer influence, things might be taking 3 times longer than they normally do. And then you add the retrograde on top of that it's Mars and Cancer in retrograde. All of that just gets even more impacted. And so a lot of people might be feeling frustrations like, they're trying to move forward in life. That Mars is like really what makes you move forward in life and forge ahead on your path, your journey. But it being in this sign of Cancer in retrograde, it's like, no, not yet. Not yet. There's still some soul searching you might have to do to make sure that you're actually in true alignment and on the right path. There might be some conversations you might have to have, like Amelia was saying, with some other people, especially knowing that Cancer represents things like, mother and therefore the family, ancestry, home. So even people having conversations about what is home, where is home, even the devastating LA fires that we experienced right at the beginning this year, January here in the United States, this whole topic of home literally being front of mind for tens of thousands, if not millions of people just here in the United States, regardless of globally. We have things going on in the Middle East. We have things going on in Africa. We have things going on even in Latin America, even, not even to get too political, but even with the new administration that literally just came in as of filming just a few days ago, we have the whole, immigration debate, and we're closing down borders, people trying to flee their homelands to arrive somewhere safely, and now having boundaries put in place and being blocked from that. This idea of where's home, where do I belong? That's literally what we're feeling on a global level right now. Something else is Mars in Cancer is pulling out of us again from January 6th until February 23rd. That's the retrograde, and then Mars remains in Cancer until April 17th in forward motion. So again, remember when I said that Mars is usually only in one sign for 2 months? We're dealing with these energies for a very long, protracted part of 2025, literally until mid-April of this new year. Cancer is also our emotional world, our inner landscape, our emotional intelligence, our emotional management, our ability to process emotions. So if you are having, things come up from childhood that you literally haven't thought about in years, then all of a sudden you're having these, memories or impressions or nostalgic moments or these old conversations that are being unearthed with maybe old families or old friends or things like that. This is all very Mars in Cancer. This is very, touchy. It's very vulnerable. Cancer is a sign of vulnerability. It's that soft little crab. It's got the hard outer shell to protect the soft insides. And that's how we're all feeling right now with this. And so if your emotional world is feeling bigger than it typically does, and if your emotional inputs or outputs are feeling just much larger and taking over more of your personality than you're used to, especially if you're not used to these kind of Cancerian watery energies, this might be a lot for some people, but just know you're not going crazy. There's nothing wrong with you. This is just what we're going through as a collective, a very emotional, very vulnerable, very heart-bored time.
As a Cancer baby, this is pretty normal for me. So like I'm at home in Cancer, I'm at home in the feels and the homebodiness and the touchy-feely and the maternal energy and all of that. I can totally get and imagine like if your emotional landscape is not a landscape you often traverse, my heart is with you, because even this is like my home terrain. It's a lot for me. Like I've felt like I was drowning in my emotions a lot. Still home base for me, but it was like a tsunami. So I can imagine if you're someone who does not traverse your emotional landscape often, things are happening in your life that are forcing you to basically reckon, there's another RE word, reckon with some things that, you're not being punished. You didn't do anything wrong. It's just things that finally need to come up and out of you, that need to be expressed, that need to be felt. Things that you didn't even think about since childhood have been coming up, and like I've had to face a lot of things. Actually, the betrayal that I spoke about earlier, what I realized, like, yes, that was a present day betrayal that needed to be repaired and resolved in real time. And a reason why it felt so big and difficult and drowny for me was because it triggered some childhood woundings that I still needed to heal. And this isn't about like, oh, I need to heal all my woundings. I believe that healing is a spiral. It was themes of rejection, betrayal, abandonment, and neglect, and not being considered. I've had to work through my whole life. And this was just like the next level of that. We still have about, at the time of this recording, a month left of this retrograde and about 3 months left of Mars being in Cancer. So there's still more to come. Right now, for me personally, I'm over like the big hump of it. But because I gave myself permission to be intentional and move slow and focus on my self-care and my joy and my pleasure, I was able to give myself permission to experience those really difficult feelings and move through them and heal them and reparent myself, which is a very Cancerian thing, learning how to reparent or remother yourself. And because I gave myself permission to go through that, I was working with the energy of the retrograde. I chose not to be afraid of this energy, and I just dove in headfirst. I was like, okay, Mars retrograde, we're here. We're feeling the feels. So I say that to say, hopefully it inspires those of you listening and watching. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. This is a fabulous opportunity for you to release something emotionally and move through something that might have been holding you back for a while.
And also, there's something here about nurturing, nourishing, because of the intense planetary transitions that we're going to be experiencing for the entirety of 2025. The better we get at regulating our own nervous systems, the better we get at reparenting or remothering ourselves, the better that we get at understanding our body signals when it's time to slow down, understanding when we need that friend, that nourishing meal, that, extra nap. That's the name of the game for 2025. How well can you learn to take care of yourself regardless of what's going on in the external world? Because the world is going to keep worlding. You heard it here first. Like, this is not going to stop. All of this fast forward momentum, what can seem at times like turbulence or chaos, natural disasters, political events, so much is going on a global scale. And how centered and grounded and nourished can you become, regardless of what's happening in the external world? That is absolutely the name of the game for 2025 and beyond, especially as we talk about this final aspect of the Mars retrograde, and that is Mars opposite Pluto. And this is kind of the biggie that I don't really hear a ton of people talking about this yet. It'd be interesting to see if we get to hear more about this. Typically, Mars will oppose Pluto, once every 1 or 2 years. But because of this Mars retrograde going backwards into the sign of Cancer, then going forward again in Leo, Mars opposite Pluto is actually occurring 3 different times. And whenever Mars hits Pluto, something big happens, because again, Mars is that planet of action and ambition and forward charge. Pluto is that planet of crisis and transformation and change. The first time that Mars was opposite Pluto, this is back in November 3rd, 2024. This was just a few days before the US election here. Again, I know that we have a global audience, but just to give some perspective, and that was when Mars was in Cancer at 29 degrees of Cancer, and Pluto was at the final degree, 29 degrees of Capricorn, which will never happen in our lifetime again. And then the second time that Mars and Pluto made this opposition was on January 2nd, right when we started this year. Mars in Leo opposite Pluto in Aquarius at that first degree. What do we see here in the US? We saw that attack down in New Orleans. That was crazy. That was out of nowhere. We saw the attack in Vegas and the Trump Hotel, sudden news events of violence, fire even involved. That is Mars Pluto action. The next date to look out for this is going to be April 27th, 2025, when Mars will again be opposite Pluto in Aquarius, and Mars will be in the sign of Leo. Now, again, those are the dates where the Mars Pluto opposition are exact. This is something that we're feeling. Typically, you feel it for 3 or 4 days. We're feeling this for 6 months because of this Mars
No big
Pluto
deal.
opposition. Yeah, no big deal. So all this extreme pressure and all that kind of stuff that you might be feeling almost as an undercurrent in your life, again, you're not alone. This is universal energy that we are all channeling at the moment. This Mars opposite Pluto, this is like birthing pains. This is like labor. This is the beginning of the birthing of the Age of Aquarius that we are currently launching into this new era with Pluto in Aquarius for the next 20 years. This Mars opposite Pluto is what is ushering in this new Age of Aquarius era. This is like the final push, the final climax. When you're watching that movie and the woman's giving birth and they're just like, okay, just 3 more pushes, just 3 more. That's kind of the energy that we're in right now. So if you're feeling that way, you are right on time. We're really moving from this age where Pluto used to be in Capricorn. It was very earthy. It was very earth-based. It was very, top down, hierarchies, patriarchy, banks, finance, all these very earthly things. Now we're moving to the Age of Aquarius. That's AI. That's innovation. That is technology. That is all this newness, air sign, aliens, UFOs, all of that, right? So we're making that switch from this very earth-based reality to almost a more airy, almost spiritual-based reality. And we are here at the dawning of this new era. All of us here are witnessing this and those birthing pains that we're going through. That Mars is wanting us to break free, to take that fear that I'm sure all of us are feeling on some level, whether it's individual fear that is very, very real in your life right now, or whether you're just noticing it in like your loved ones or your community or on a global level, taking that fear that we are all experiencing in some way or another, big or small, and how do we transform, how do we alchemize Pluto that into courage? that into birthing the new era, that into creating this dawn of a new age as a collective. We are holding the power in this very moment, both as individuals and as a group collective, to birth this new era. And this Mars-Pluto is what is ushering in this new age. And so it's going to be uncomfortable sometimes. There's going to be some tears. There might be some explosions. And also, there's so much beauty and joy and pleasure that is possible in creating a new world that is more just, more equal, more fair for all.
When you said the dates, I literally had like chills. Because when I think of Mars, it's like the ability to do and make something happen. When I think of Pluto, I think of transformation, yes, and I also think of power, power over, power under, or power with. And on those dates for me, there was like definitely power struggle in my personal relationships because I knew that Mars was opposing Pluto. I had my little raincoat and I had my rain boots. And I was like, oh, there's that energy. January 2nd, there was a very crucial conversation that happened. I knew that if I succumbed to power over under, then I wouldn't be able to use the gift of power with. But I felt that energy in me. I knew that this Mars Pluto opposition would create, because I like to have a lot of power. It's, like it, not who doesn't, maybe not everyone, but a lot, power is like this thing that makes me feel strong and all of that. And I'm very aware of like when I have that desire. And I knew that it would be extra strong during this time. It's not just on those dates, like you said, Ashley. It's like, it's the energy, it's the weather right now. And so I'm always like asking myself, where do I feel like I'm losing power? Where do I feel like I'm losing control? Where do I feel like I'm desperate to regain my power, right? So in a crucial conversation, I prefer that term over difficult conversation. I'm always like constantly regulating myself, even when I'm like highly emotional. And I love that you gave one of the tips, like the name of the game through all of this changing energy is how well can you regulate your emotions, right? Because we can blame how we're feeling and what's going on for us on so many external things. But the truth is, the outer cosmos are just a reflection of our inner cosmos, right? And so for me, during these crucial conversations, it's like, where is the power struggle within me? Where am I seeking to gain power over this other person or over this situation? And how can I just kind of like ride the wave and say what needs to be said, hold my boundaries, respect myself, but then also kind of ride the wave, like release control in a way. And I've never given birth, but I've birthed many projects. Any of you that have never given birth and you're like, I can't really relate to that. For any of you that have like tried to make something happen and you made it happen and right there, that final push, whether you're an athlete and you just got to have that shot of adrenaline. And from what I've heard from people who have given actual birth, it is this like push, surrender, push, surrender, push, surrender. So that's kind of just the energy that I've been feeling. It's like my feet are like on the brakes and on the gas at the same time. And the more that I can regulate my nervous system, the more I can control, navigate, that's a better word. The better I can navigate the rocky terrain. So that's kind of how it's been showing up for me. I've been putting in the work, y'all, and it's been a really beautiful experience. And yes, there's been a lot of really emotional, tumultuous, difficult moments that I've had to experience and face and go through. But through it, I was learning how to balance my push, surrender, push, surrender. It's like, okay, said what I had to say. All right, now I have to hear what you have to say, and whatever you say, I can't control it. So let's just ride this wave. I've had a lot of crucial conversations during this time. I've also had a lot of experiences where I'm like, is this person trying to like get one up on me? So I've also noticed it in other people, but like I would not, because I have my weather report. I'm like, I'm not going to give in to that. I'm just not going to participate in that fight. And I've just been more of like an observer and a participant, but being an observer is a much better vantage point sometimes. It's been intense. Now, I'm speaking from a vantage point of all the shit went down and I've reflected and I've metabolized the lessons. While I was going through it, you can ask my friends, I had to call squad. Okay. I expressed some of it to Ashley as well. I'm like, I'm going through it. I want to die, like I'm very dramatic, Leo dominant chart, but I accepted all of it. I surrendered to it. I allowed it to happen and I self-cared.
I love that analogy of one foot on the brake, one foot on, on the accelerator. That's really what this Mars retrograde in Cancer opposite Pluto is really giving us at this time. This is the vibe that we're getting on a global level. That's just where we're at. And there's beauty in that. And there's lessons in that, as you've explained so eloquently today. And also there's a divine harmony in that. I want anyone listening or watching to just remember that at a universal level, there is a reason for all of this. The planets are not making us do anything. As much as we joke about that, it's more of a reflection, as above, so below, of what is going on here on Earth, being reflected by the energies that we are able to read and interpret in the sky. There's a reason that we're having this stop-start energy of the Mars retrograde. There's a reason that we are unearthing our past with Mars and Cancer. There's a reason that we're questioning how we show up in our authenticity with Mars and Leo, because that is what we are all needing to go through and the lessons that we are all needing to experience at this time, especially because if we're taking just a longer view of the fact that we're entering this new era, this new age of Aquarius, it's like peak authenticity is what is being called for. There's no more room for being fake. There's no more room for not being heart-centered. So many people, I predict, are going to be getting exposed. People who thrived under the old hierarchy of the Pluto and Capricorn era, corporations and doing things a certain way. We're going to see a lot of those old ways of behaving, old ways of being, old systems, either shifting, evolving, some dissolving, some crumbling. We have 20 years ahead of this energy, so we'll see how that plays out. Pure and unique authenticity is what is being asked of us at this time. Authenticity in how we show up as an individual, and then also authenticity in how we show up as a collective, finding our like-minded tribe. That is totally what's going to be happening over these next few years and decades. And the only way that you can find the people that you for real vibe with and who are your for real tribe is actually being vulnerable, Cancer, and showing who you really are at your soft, squishy core. So I hope that that helps to inspire or put this into perspective.
In the spirit of this show, basically being the anti-fear-mongering astrology squad, what is the opportunity here for us? Mars and Pluto, it sounds so like aggro and tense, like giving birth, oh my gosh. And then Mars in Cancer is like a fireball trying to make it through the ocean. If you look at it through the fear-mongering lens, it can feel like, oh, so we're all being punished. What do you mean delays? What do you mean all of this stuff? But for me, the opportunity has really been, in my own personal experience, is like an opportunity to show up authentically and express yourself, set your boundaries. Leo loves boundaries and like authentic expression in a vulnerable, loving kind way, which Cancer loves. It's an opportunity to show up differently. It's an opportunity to shed whatever masks that you've been wearing that have been such a burden for you, and to show up so real. And for a lot of us, sometimes that's why these huge emotional things happen, whether it's something you're really scared of on a global scale, or something in your personal life like a betrayal or a conflict with a loved one. It gives us an opportunity to feel feelings that maybe we've been trying to shut down and push down. And through feeling them, when I've had big feelings, it's like you have no choice but to be really authentic. There comes a point where you can't bottle it up anymore, where you can't hide, where you can't lie. The feelings are so big, like, I just gotta say something. I like to see it as the universe, the cosmos are supporting us, pushing us to a next level of authentic expression, heart-centered communication. And some of us need a bigger push. I try not to, but I naturally wear like the tough I've got it all together mask. And it forced me to just be so vulnerable in a way and need so much support. And I can tell that the people who love me, they were like, what an honor it is to love and support you. It's nice to meet you. I've deepened relationships in a way that I don't know would have been possible if I wasn't going through such a tough time. These tough times are opportunities for you to be your real self, take another layer off of your guardedness and all of that, and find your people. Systems are breaking down, y'all, and we're feeling it, but it's not a bad thing.
Wrapping up the conversation, just remembering that everything, like we've been saying this whole time, is in perfect alignment. Everything is as it should be. All the feels you're feeling are perfectly correct. The rage, the frustration, the confusion, the not knowing anything right now. This is all just part of what's happening in the cultural zeitgeist in this point of time in human history. And so we are so honored to be here with all of you together. We all chose to be here at this point of time.
You and I chose it so we could have this conversation right now.
Exactly. It all came down to this moment. It's such an honor, and we are so excited to keep bringing you guys these episodes for this series to let you guys have the lowdown on how these planetary movements are going to be impacting you at an individual and a collective level over the rest of 2025 and beyond.
Like, subscribe, comment. All our Instagrams will be on there if you want to DM us. We would love to open up the conversation. I know Ashley and I are both fully leaning into Pluto and Aquarius energy and creating community. Our next episode that we'll be putting out will be about the full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo.
Thank you, everybody. See you next time.
Switch this, switch this, switch this up. Let's switch up tonight.